Good evening, Pastor Scample. Usually we do this a little bit earlier, but
Yeah.
this is the evening. How you doing?
Pretty good, thank you.
Good, good. Well, I got to have a little bit of a heavy hand in the discussion topic this week. So, as you know, people are starting to talk now about how we get out of our current, situation in place that we have, and how do we get back to normal? And just for some context, the governor this past week made some decisions
Of Georgia.
Governor of Georgia made some decisions to bring us back, bring us back in stages. He actually opened up beaches, I think, about a week ago or something like that, and then he announced some particular kinds of businesses would open up, and then we're going to ease into it from there, apparently. And this was met with happiness in some corners and a lot of criticism in others. And so the reason I say all that is just set the environment. You and the elders of the church, we have to get together and sort of figure out how church is going to make that same transition. Thankfully, we're not running anything as big as the state of Georgia, but some of the things are similar. And I know we're still talking about that. We're not going to announce any dates or anything like that. We don't have a plan. But my question, there's a long way to get to my question, but my question is, what's going on in your head as far as some of the concerns you have or some of the principles you have or some of the things that ought to shape the way we think about it as we talk about coming back to church?
Well, I'm glad that on Friday I can get a haircut and a tattoo. So that's going to be beneficial.
Well,
but other than that,
congratulations on that.
Yes, thank you. Other than that, as I was thinking about the subject that you wanted to talk about today, what came to my mind, of course, was Hebrews chapter 10. And there, the author of Hebrews, of course, exhorts us that we are to consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, and we're not to forsake the assembling of ourselves together. So there is a pull, or there should be, if you're really saved, there's a pull in the true Christian to be at the fellowship with believers, attending church, being involved in church. When this is all over, if you don't have a desire to be in church, there's something spiritually wrong with you, and that needs to be changed in your life.
So somebody gets into a groove, and my wife and I were talking about this. There's a lot less pressure as far as getting ready, getting in your car, traveling, getting to church on time, getting kids ready, all that. There's a certain amount of comfortability by tuning in,
Sure.
and firing up the computer.
Sure.
So you're saying if you like that, you can like that too much and not desire enough to come back and not make plans to come back.
Yeah, that's sinful. I mean, basically, you have here the scripture saying that the true, genuine believer regularly attends church. That's part of their lifestyle. That's a weekly part of their lifestyle. When the church assembles, they're with the assembly. So that's the normal Christian life. We're obviously in an abnormal situation now, and there's a couple of things that I think we probably need to talk about this afternoon. One probably doesn't have a direct impact on church, and then the other does. So, with our leadership telling us that the church, that the city is our state is somewhat open, they're obviously going to be cranking up the opportunity for people to get out and be involved in things they were involved in prior to this scare. So one of the things that we should keep in mind is this is not being mandated to us by the government. So they're not coming to our house, pulling out a gun and saying, you have to get out of your house. This is a personal decision that we have to make, and we have to make the best personal decision for ourselves. And so I think that we need to think about what's best for me and my family. And so maybe you and your family, the best is on a general area, staying in. We're not coming out for another month and a half, 2 months, 3 months. That may be your family choice. But it's not a good or bad choice here. It's not a sin issue choice. This is an issue of personal preference.
Wisdom.
We have to keep it in mind. It's a wisdom issue. And so some of us that are more susceptible to this illness need to stay inside.
Or live with somebody who's
Or
susceptible.
live with somebody who is susceptible, exactly. We need to stay inside. Or come up with an alternative plan where we can go out, disinfect, and come back. Something.
Right.
Yeah. So that's in a secular way. Okay.
Right.
And so you hear it on the news. Some people say, "Well, how should I respond as a Christian?" Well, you respond with wisdom. I mean, it's not a big decision here. You either stay in or you come out, whatever's best for you in your situation. Now, when it comes to a church, there's another issue. Because people feel they ought to feel more desire to be out. Okay, I want to be at church. This is the heartbeat of my Christian experience. I want to obey God. I want to be in His will. And so when it comes to those type of things, I believe that wisdom is still necessary, because the scare is still not over yet, particularly for certain age groups. And so they ought to feel comfortable.
And you still have to obey the other parts of Scripture to say, love your neighbor and
Absolutely.
care for, that we've covered before in these kind of talks.
Yeah. So it's still a situation where if I'm susceptible, if I'm in that age group, if I have underlying health issues, coming out to church is probably not going to be a good thing for me. Okay. And it might not be that I'm going to get sick. It may be I just can't worship right, because I'm just afraid of you. I see you walking down the aisle and think you might be coming towards me, and so I saw pins and needles the whole time.
Right.
Well, you're not worshiping God. I mean, you're operating out of concern, and so you can't be a part of the worship the way you would want to be normally. And so I think that although we will eventually be opening up the church, we know as leadership that not everybody's going to come back right away, and that's okay. We're hoping that people make personal decisions for themselves and their families. Some will come later. We'll all eventually come back, but it's gonna be a process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I was thinking about this, I'm always, well, not always, but I often think about the opportunities for sin in these kind of situations. And it struck me that as I watched people handling the governor's statement, the church ought to have some kind of different response, even if you have similar concerns, in that if you think that you're going to come back to church earlier because you feel healthy or your situation is less intrusive on somebody else or whatever, you just feel like, I'm anxious to get back and I'm going to come back first day I can. You shouldn't feel pride in saying, I have more faith, or, I trust God more with this. Nor should you look down on other people and say, well, they're just staying home out of fear or something like that.
Yeah.
And yet if you're the other guy who's staying home, you shouldn't look on the early attenders and say, well, they're just foolish, they're unwise, they're uncaring, they're going to hurt somebody.
Look at those dumb people.
Yeah, and I think that there's room in this, if we're not careful, to respond with acrimony and a little bit of judgment of your brother or sister, and treat them as if their faith in different ways is not as strong as yours. And that's a concern of mine. I think not only do you have to, as you point out, make what a wise choice is for you, but give other people room to make wise choices for them. And
Romans 14.
And be fine with that. And just say, if they come back earlier, glory to God. If they come back later, glory to God. And I think we don't, in that way we reflect our trust in God, and our trust in God working in other people in ways that you can't see it to read blog posts in Georgia these days. Yeah.
So here's what we're going to do as a church. As a church, we're going to continue our streaming of our full church program as we have been doing. That's going to continue on. When people start coming back, we're still going to stream. Of course, we've been streaming online for years, as you know, so this is not new for us. but we're going to continue to stream the Sunday school class.
So kind of full ramped up streaming
Yeah,
that we've
yeah.
been doing
Yeah, so
lately.
yeah, so we're going to continue to make church accessible to the people who are not comfortable coming out yet. And so we want the members of our church to know that although they might not be coming back initially, when we do say we're open for church services, they might not feel comfortable coming back, but we want them to know that they can still have an experience of worship where they are.
We're going to do the best we can for them.
Best we can for them where they are, and we'll continue to kind of juggle that as far as how much online experience we'll be able to give people compared with what's going on here at the church and in the sanctuary.
Gotcha.
And so we'll when people start coming back, we'll continue the deep type of cleaning that we've been doing. We'll be making that accessible. We'll be encouraging people to join us in prayer. When prayer group starts back up again and I'm out in the sanctuary, we probably won't stream that the way we've been doing the Zoom classes, Zoom sessions, but we'll be coming up with creative ways for people to join in. So what I want the membership to know is that we're not going to forget about people and just minister to people who are on site here. We know that some of our members will not be comfortable coming out right away, and we're okay with that. We want people to do what's best for them in their situation.
Gotcha.
But we want to minister to people here and there at the same time and not leave people out.
Gotcha. That's good. Yeah. I also had some questions along the line. Do you think, this is just your personal opinion, I mean, it's going to play out in time, but do you think normal's not going to be normal anymore when it comes to this stuff? And what I'm thinking about is we have a robust welcome time at our church. Our members always enjoy spending a significant part of time walking around, shaking hands, hugging, that kind of stuff. Do you think that people who used to be aggressive huggers are now going to be just kind of handshake people, and we're all going to, some of this distancing is going to stick with us mentally and in some of our, there's some good practices going on maybe now that'll stick in some people's mind?
That's an interesting question. I hear that a lot from people. Things are never going to be the same. And quite frankly, I heard that after 9/11 too.
Yeah.
And people eventually forgot 9/11. I mean, just think about how cataclysmic 9/11 was to our country. It shook our country to the core.
Right.
And if it wasn't for the fact that it wasn't for the fact that there are ceremonies every 9/11, guess what?
You wouldn't remember that.
People would. It'd be a distant
Right.
memory. Now
A mark in the history book.
Yeah, mark in the history book. Once the government or whoever is researching this thing gets a vaccine for this, it's like the flu. To me. Now, again, I'm not a doctor, so don't quote me on that.
Right.
But in my opinion, people are welcome to have their opinions. In my opinion, one of the reasons that people are responding the way that they're responding is because there's no medical treatment that's accepted by everybody to either lessen the symptoms or you avoid it altogether. Once that comes into play, and we have the best scientists in the world here in the U.S. I don't doubt there's going to be some type of something come out. There's too much money to be made, as you know.
Right.
So I'm sure that once that comes out, some people will get the vaccine. Some people will say, well, if I get it, I'll just take these pills, take a squirt or whatever, and I'll ride out the symptoms like I do the flu. And some people will have herd immunity, and they'll get it, but it'll be barely noticeable. And so when that happens over time, I think it'll get back to a normal. Now, one of the things that kind of has surprised me, I'm sure it surprised you, at how much the models have changed. And by this I mean this: we don't really know what's going on, to be honest. I mean, just think about it for just a minute.
Oh, that's true.
Do we really know what's happening? No, because some of these stats they're throwing out, these things change on the dime.
They conflict a lot of them on the same day.
And then some of them are diametrically opposed to each other. So I think it's going to take I think part of the process of when you say are things going to get back out of normal, I think when people start getting reliable data, then
Figure out what has happened.
what's actually happened. You know, not rumor, not innuendo. I heard this, or I heard this was going. Well, you know, some people, stuff spreads on social media, you know, like wildfire. I mean, I literally heard on social media that the National Guard was going to be called up and they were shutting down the U.S. completely. I heard that, and that was all over social media. Did that happen?
Not yet.
Yeah. I mean, they're getting ready to open up again,
Right.
you know, and I mean, I know that we're kind of just shooting the breeze right now, but I just think that part of the problem here is that people don't have reliable data, and when you don't have reliable data, then you just kind of believe anything that comes down the pike.
Right. Right. And it gets politicized, and so you've
All
got
the
your
time.
set of experts, and I
All
got
the
mine,
time.
and
All the time.
so yeah, I think there is a lot of confusion that has created a messy situation. Hopefully, history and time will allow us to look back with a little bit less jaundice and figure out what happened and how to react a little bit better next time, maybe. But,
Yeah, and I think that goes into people's decisions. I mean, sister
Yeah.
so and so or brother so and so is going to make a decision about church based on what they know and feel, and we as a church are going to respond to that faithfully. We're going to continue to minister to them. We're not going to make anybody feel less than or more than. You know, just as you were saying, we're not going to make this thing a sin issue if you're here, or a righteousness issue if you're, a sin issue if you're not here, or a righteousness issue if you're here.
right.
We want to encourage people wherever they might be.
So me as an average congregant, when I hear you and the elders are feel like from the information you have, it's good for people to start coming back to the church, I should not necessarily come back immediately, but take that and evaluate my situation and then figure out my trajectory. But my trajectory needs to be, eventually I got to get into church.
Yeah, absolutely. That goes without question. To not be faithful to the assembling of yourselves is a violation of a scriptural directive.
Yeah.
And genuine Christians don't operate that way.
Right.
And so there should be a desire, a pull, a godly, righteous movement in your heart to be with the saints in the gathering, encouraging and being encouraged. And that's one thing that, as good as the streaming gets, it's no replacement for the assembling of God's people together.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good thought to end on. Appreciate your time.
Welcome.
Look forward to doing this again.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah.